There's a $1.7 trillion crisis destroying an entire generation's future, and it was sold to them as the path to success. Student loans have become the largest category of consumer debt after mortgages, trapping 45 million Americans in payments that will follow them for decades, prevent them from buying homes, delay them from having families, and keep them locked in jobs they hate because they can't afford to take risks when debt collectors are waiting. This isn't just unfortunate, it's a deliberately engineered system, where teenagers are encouraged to sign for six-figure debts they can't discharge in bankruptcy, for education that often doesn't lead to income sufficient to repay the loans, all while banks, universities, and the government profit from their desperation. Here's what makes the student loan system uniquely predatory. It targets children. 17 and 18-year-olds with no financial literacy, no credit history, and no real understanding of what $80,000 in debt means are told they have no choice, you need college to succeed, and you need loans to afford college. So they sign papers committing their entire adult lives to debt slavery before they're old enough to rent a car. And unlike every other form of debt in America, student loans can't be discharged in bankruptcy. You can declare bankruptcy on credit cards, medical bills, even gambling debts, but student loans follow you to the grave. This makes them uniquely profitable for lenders and uniquely destructive for borrowers. But the scam goes deeper than just predatory lending. The entire system is rigged. Universities raise tuition far beyond inflation because students have access to unlimited loans, knowing those students will pay any price. The government guarantees the loans, removing all risk from banks while ensuring students can't escape. And when graduates can't find jobs that pay enough to cover the debt, they're offered solutions like income-based repayment that extend the loan term to 20-25 years and cause the balance to grow rather than shrink through capitalized interest. The cost of living rises, wages stagnate, and an entire generation has been sold into debt servitude in the name of education. Stick with me, and I'll expose exactly how the student loan system operates as a scam, who profits from destroying young lives, and why this represents the largest wealth transfer from the poor to the financial elite in modern history. Ready to see how they sold a generation into slavery? Let's break down the trillion-dollar scam. Let's start with how the student loan system created an education bubble where prices have exploded to absurd levels, specifically because unlimited loans are available. In 1980, the average cost of tuition at a public university was about $3,500 per year in today's dollars. By 2020, that same education cost over $10,000 per year, a 200% increase far beyond general inflation. Private universities are even worse, with many charging $50,000, $70,000 per year. How did this happen? Simple. When students got access to unlimited federal loans that can't be discharged in bankruptcy, universities realized they could charge whatever they wanted because students would just borrow more. The Sabio Observer recognizes this as classic economic incentive distortion. When someone else pays the bill in this case, future you through debt present, you doesn't feel price sensitivity. Universities compete not on price but on amenities, building luxury dorms, state-of-the-art gyms, climbing walls, lazy rivers, and administrative bloat that has nothing to do with education quality. They're selling an experience, not education, and they're pricing it at whatever level the loan system will bear. Between 1980 and 2020, university administrative staff increased by 60%, while faculty stayed relatively flat. These administrators aren't teaching classes. They're managing the business of extracting maximum revenue from students who have access to debt. And here's where it becomes a scam. Universities know exactly what they're doing. They publish starting salary statistics that make degrees seem worth the investment. But those numbers are manipulated. They exclude graduates who don't find jobs in their field. They count any employment even if it's minimum wage, and they survey right after graduation before the reality of the job market sets in. Meanwhile, they encourage students to take more expensive majors in fields with terrible job prospects, because loan money spends the same whether you're studying engineering or art history. The debt crisis isn't accidental. It's the natural result of giving teenagers unlimited credit to buy a product where the seller has no accountability for whether that product delivers promised returns. Universities profit immediately, lenders profit for decades, and students pay for the scam with their entire adult lives. But it gets worse when you look at how the loans themselves are structured. Now let's expose the most predatory feature of student loans that most borrowers don't understand until it's too late. Capitalized interest that turns $50,000 borrowed into $100,000 owed even if you never missed a payment. Here's how the scam works. While you're in school, interest accrues on your unsubsidized federal loans and all private loans. At 6 to 7% interest, that's about $3,000, $4,000 per year accumulating silently. Most students don't think about it because they're not required to pay while enrolled. But when you graduate, that accumulated interest gets capitalized, added to your principal balance, meaning you now owe interest on the interest forever. Let's do the math that destroys lives. You borrow $2,500 per year for 4 years, totaling $50,000 during those 4 years. Roughly $7,000 in interest accumulates. Upon graduation, your balance is $57,000, not the $50,000 you borrowed. Now you start repayment on $57,000 at 6.5% for 10 years, paying about $650 monthly. Over those 10 years, you'll pay $78,000, total $28,000 in interest alone. But most graduates can't afford $650 monthly, so they go into income-based repayment. Under income-driven plans, your payment is based on your income, typically 10% of discretionary income. If you're making $35,000 per year, your payment might be only $200 per month, which doesn't even cover the monthly interest accumulation of $308. Here's where the trap springs shut. When your monthly payment doesn't cover monthly interest, the unpaid interest capitalizes again, being added to your balance. Your debt grows despite making payments. After 5 years of paying $200 monthly, $12,000 paid, your balance might be $65,000 instead of going down. The banking system designed this deliberately. They gave you the escape valve of income-based repayment, but that escape valve is actually a trap that makes your debt grow. 25 years later, after paying hundreds of dollars monthly for your entire adult life, you've paid back more than you borrowed, but still owe more than you started with. And unlike bankruptcy protection, or normal debt that reflects your ability to pay, student loans are guaranteed by the government, meaning the risk is zero for lenders while being infinite for you. This debt multiplication through capitalization isn't a side effect, it's the business model. But the scam has a third layer that makes it even more evil. Let's examine how student loans don't just burden individuals, they systematically destroy an entire generation's ability to build wealth, start families, and participate in the economy, creating a permanent underclass that works to service debt rather than accumulate assets. The average student loan borrower graduates owing $30,000, $40,000, with many owing $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 or more. The average starting salary is $50,000, $55,000. That means young adults are starting their earning lives already in debt worth nearly 2 years of gross income. The financial elite graduate debt-free with help from wealthy parents, immediately able to save, invest, and build wealth. Everyone else starts in a hole they'll spend decades climbing out of. The Sabio Observer sees how this creates massive economic consequences that go far beyond individual hardship. Student loan debt delays homeownership by an average of 7 years, meaning millennials can't build equity while prices rise, can't benefit from housing appreciation, can't access the wealth-building mechanism that created the middle class. Debt delays marriage and childbirth. The average age of first-time homebuyers and parents keeps rising, because people can't afford life milestones while servicing debt. Debt kills entrepreneurship. You can't start a business or take career risks when you have $600 monthly payments that don't stop, regardless of your employment situation. An entire generation has been converted from wealth builders into debt servicers, working to pay interest on education that was supposed to enable their success. And here's the final piece of the scam. Student loans can't be discharged in bankruptcy, making them uniquely inescapable. Lost your job? Debt remains. Became disabled? Debt remains. Life crisis? Debt remains. This makes student loans more profitable than any other form of lending, no risk of default write-off, guaranteed by the government, and borrowers have no leverage to negotiate. Meanwhile, the cost of living keeps rising. Wages stay flat relative to inflation, and the job market increasingly demands expensive degrees for jobs that don't pay enough to justify the debt. The system has created a permanent class of debt servants who will work their entire lives paying interest on loans for education that didn't deliver the promised return. The wealth gap explodes because those without student debt, or those whose parents paid, can immediately start building assets, while the indebted spend decades just getting to zero. This isn't an unfortunate outcome. It's wealth extraction on a generational scale, and it's functioning exactly as the financial elite designed it. They profit from your debt while ensuring you can never compete with their accumulated wealth. So there you have it. The $1.7 trillion student loan system exposed as a deliberate scam that targets children, multiplies debt through predatory interest structures, and systematically destroys an entire generation's economic future. Universities profit by inflating prices. Lenders profit from guaranteed, non-dischargeable debt. The government profits from interest on federal loans. And 45 million Americans pay the price with decades of their lives, sacrificing home ownership, families, entrepreneurship, and any hope of building wealth to service debt for education that was supposed to be their path to success. The question you face now is, if you have student loans, are you going to accept this slavery as inevitable, or are you going to get angry enough to fight back within the broken system's rules? Because while you can't discharge student loans in bankruptcy, there are strategies the financial elite don't advertise. Aggressive repayment to minimize interest, strategic use of income-driven plans if necessary, refinancing when you can get lower rates, and most importantly, preventing the next generation from falling into the same trap by funding education without debt whenever possible. And if you don't have student loans but you're young, understanding this scam means you can make different choices about education. Cheaper schools, working while learning, alternatives to traditional college that don't chain you to decades of payments. Here's what I need you to do this week. If you have student loans, log into your account and look at your total balance versus what you originally borrowed. Calculate how much interest you've paid so far versus how much principal you've reduced. That's the scam in numbers, your money flowing to lenders while your balance barely moves. If you're young and considering college, calculate the total cost, including 4 years of living expenses and interest that will accumulate. Then research the realistic starting salary for your intended major. If the debt exceeds your first year's salary, you're walking into a trap. And if this video exposed the student loan system as the generational wealth destruction scam it really is, if you now see how they sold millions into debt slavery, in the name of education, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Because the next video continues our journey. I'm going to expose mortgages as another debt trap, show you how the 30-year mortgage was engineered to extract maximum wealth, and reveal why homeownership through debt isn't wealth building, but wealth extraction. The student loan scam is just one weapon in the debt system's arsenal. Understanding them all is your only defense.